The machines that gave us time.
Look at me helping, Mom.
You are doing a wonderful job, sweetie.
How everyday inventions changed civilization. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that every household appliance in your home has vanished. No refrigerator, no washing machine, no microwave, no vacuum cleaner, no dishwasher, nothing. Your milk has spoiled overnight. Yesterday's leftovers are no longer safe to eat. A pile of dirty clothes waits to be scrubbed by hand. Dust gathers on every surface. Even preparing breakfast takes hours instead of minutes. It sounds like a nightmare. Yet for most of human history, this wasn't a nightmare. It was simply life. For thousands of years, ordinary people spent a large portion of every day performing tasks that modern machines now complete almost effortlessly. Laundry could consume an entire day. Food preservation was a constant battle against time. Cleaning required physical strength and endless patience. And a simple household chore could leave a person exhausted before noon. Today, we rarely think about these problems. We push a button, turn a dial, open a door, and move on with our lives. But hidden behind those simple actions are extraordinary stories. Stories of inventors, engineers, dreamers, and accidental discoveries. Stories that transform not only our homes, but civilization itself. Because the greatest gift these machines gave us wasn't convenience. It was something far more valuable, time. And the story begins with one of humanity's oldest and most dreaded chores, laundry. For most people alive today, laundry is little more than a minor inconvenience. You separate colors, add detergent, press start, and wait. But travel back just 2 centuries, and washing clothes was among the hardest jobs in any household. Families carried water from wells, rivers, or public pumps.
Home.
Clothes were soaked in large wooden tubs.
Here.
Done.
They were scrubbed against rough washboards until knuckles bled. Then rinsed repeatedly, then twisted by hand to squeeze out water, then hung outside to dry. The process could take an entire day. In many countries, Monday became known simply as wash day. Not because people enjoyed it, but because they needed a full day every week just to clean their clothes. For wealthy households, servants often spent most of their working lives doing laundry. For everyone else, it was unavoidable labor. As cities expanded during the 19th century, the problem only grew larger. People owned more clothes than ever before. But washing methods had changed very little. Humanity desperately needed help. The first attempts at mechanized washing appeared during the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
Good.
They were simple devices, wooden drums, hand cranks, rotating barrels. They reduced some physical effort but still required human muscle. It was progress, but not revolution. The real breakthrough would come when inventors began harnessing a new force that was transforming the world. Electricity. At the beginning of the 20th century, electricity felt almost magical. Cities glowed after sunset. Factories became more productive. Inventors everywhere wondered, if electricity could power industry, could it also transform the home? One of the people asking that question was a relatively obscure engineer named Alva J. Fisher. Unlike famous inventors such as Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla, Fisher never became a household name. Yet his work would enter millions of households. Working for the Hurley Machine Company, Fisher helped develop one of the first commercially successful electric washing machines. In 1908, a machine called the Thor entered the market. For the first time, an electric motor handled much of the hard work. Families no longer needed to spend hours turning heavy cranks. The machine wasn't perfect. Water and electricity made a dangerous combination. Early models occasionally shocked users. Mechanical failures were common. Repairs were frequent. But none of that mattered, because something extraordinary had happened. For the first time in history, a machine had begun taking over one of humanity's oldest chores. The washing machine did more than clean clothes. It gave people hours of their lives back. Hours that could be spent working, learning, resting, or simply enjoying time with family. Historians often describe household appliances as silent drivers of social change. And few machines had a greater impact than the washing machine. Yet even as clean clothes became easier to achieve, another enemy still lurked inside every home: dust. Today dust seems harmless, a minor annoyance, something removed in a few minutes with a vacuum cleaner. But during the 19th century, dust was a serious problem. Coal fires filled homes with soot. Factories polluted the air. Heavy carpets trapped dirt deep within their fibers. Cleaning them was exhausting. People rolled carpets outside, hung them over fences, and beat them repeatedly with sticks. Clouds of dust exploded into the air. Ironically, cleaning often made the environment dirtier before it became cleaner. Inventors searched for solutions. Many early machines attempted to blow dust away. They failed spectacularly. Instead of removing dirt, they launched it across the room. Then, in 1901, a British engineer attended a demonstration that changed everything. His name was Hubert Cecil Booth. Born in Gloucester, England, in 1871, Booth studied engineering at London's prestigious Central Technical College. He was intelligent, ambitious, and fascinated by machines. At the demonstration, Booth watched yet another device attempt to clean carpets by blowing air. Like many observers, he was unimpressed. But instead of walking away, he asked a simple question. What if the machine did the opposite? What if it sucked dirt in instead? Legend says Booth knelt down, placed a handkerchief over his mouth, and attempted to suck dust from a carpet himself. When he examined the cloth afterward, it was covered with dirt. That crude experiment revealed something important. Suction worked, and it worked extremely well.
Amazing. Witness the power of the vacuum!
Months later, Booth unveiled one of the world's first powered vacuum cleaners. It was enormous, far too large to fit inside a house. The machine remained outside while workers fed long hoses through windows. Horse-drawn carriages transported it through London's streets. The engine roared. The hoses snaked into buildings. Crowds gathered to watch. Children chased after it. Some people feared it. Others were fascinated. Booth nicknamed it Puffing Billy. And despite its size, customers loved it. Soon, wealthy families, hotels, theaters, and government buildings were hiring Booth's company. Even King Edward VII indirectly benefited when Booth's machines helped clean parts of Westminster Abbey before his coronation. But there was still a problem. The machine was far too expensive for ordinary people. The vacuum cleaner needed its own revolution. And that revolution would come from an unlikely place. A department store janitor struggling to breathe. The janitor, the tin can, and the woman who changed every kitchen. Imagine spending every day surrounded by dust. Not for a few minutes, but for 10 hours. Every single day. That was life for James Murray Spangler. Unlike many inventors of his time, Spangler wasn't a wealthy businessman or university professor. He was born in 1848 on a small farm in Ohio, United States. His formal education was limited, and throughout his life he worked a variety of jobs: farmer, salesman, and eventually a janitor in a department store. Every evening, after shoppers left, Spangler swept endless rows of carpets. The dust was relentless. There was just one problem. He suffered from severe asthma. Every breath became a struggle. Every workday ended with coughing fits. For most people, the obvious solution would have been to find another job. Spangler chose a different path. He decided to invent one. Money was scarce, so Spangler built his machine using whatever he could find. An old electric fan motor, a wooden soap box, a broom handle, a pillowcase to collect dust. It looked more like a school science project than a revolutionary invention, but when he switched it on, it worked. For the first time, a lightweight electric vacuum cleaner could be pushed through a home by one person. In 1907, Spangler patented his invention. Unfortunately, being a brilliant inventor doesn't always make you a successful businessman. Spangler lacked the money to manufacture his machine on a large scale. Fortunately, fate intervened. One of his cousins purchased one of his prototypes. She was so impressed that she showed it to her husband. His name was William Henry Hoover. Hoover owned a leather goods company. Recognizing the machine's potential, he purchased the patent, improved the design, and transformed it into a global business. Soon, the Hoover vacuum cleaner became one of the world's most recognizable household products. In Britain, people became so familiar with the brand that they stopped saying, "I'm going to vacuum the carpet." Instead they said, "I'm going to Hoover." Only a handful of companies have ever become verbs. Hoover is one of them. Did you know, during the early 1900s, vacuum cleaners were considered luxury items? Salespeople didn't simply sell them. They demonstrated them. Some wealthy British women even hosted vacuum cleaner parties,
Amazing.
inviting friends to watch the latest cleaning technology in action.
My.
Imagine inviting your neighbors over today, just to watch someone vacuum the living room. By the early 20th century, homes were becoming cleaner. Laundry was easier, dust was disappearing, but another everyday frustration remained. Dinner, more specifically, opening it, the can that nobody could open. Today, canned food is everywhere. Soup, beans, vegetables, fruit, pet food, emergency supplies. It has become so ordinary that we rarely stop to wonder how revolutionary it once was. The story begins on the battlefields of Europe. At the beginning of the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte faced a serious problem. His armies could travel thousands of kilometers. His food could not. Spoiled food meant hungry soldiers. Hungry soldiers lost battles. In 1795, Napoleon offered a substantial cash prize to anyone who could discover a reliable method of preserving food. One man accepted the challenge. His name was Nicolas Appert. Born in France in 1749, Appert wasn't a scientist. He was a chef and confectioner. Without formal scientific training, he spent years experimenting in his kitchen. Eventually, he discovered that sealing food inside glass containers and heating them dramatically slowed spoilage. The method worked. Napoleon awarded him the prize. Today, Appert is remembered as the father of canning. But glass jars weren't practical for long military campaigns. Something stronger was needed. The birth of the tin can. In 1810, English merchant Peter Durand patented the use of tin-coated iron cans for preserving food. They were incredibly durable, perhaps too durable. The metal walls were often thicker than the food inside. There was only one small oversight. Nobody had invented a proper way to open them. The instructions printed on early military ration cans were astonishing. They recommended using a hammer and a chisel. Imagine buying canned soup today and needing construction tools to eat dinner. Soldiers attacked cans with bayonets. Sailors used axes. Families grabbed knives, rocks, or anything heavy enough to force the lid open. It was dangerous, messy, and surprisingly common. For almost 50 years, humanity had cans without can openers. The simple invention that changed everything. In 1870, American inventor William Lyman introduced the first practical can opener. His design used a sharp rotating wheel that traveled around the edge of the can. It looked surprisingly familiar. In the 1920s, engineers added a rotating gear that gripped the can more securely. That basic design is still used today. Sometimes, history isn't changed by giant machines. Sometimes it's changed by a tiny wheel. As preserved food became common, families cooked more meals than ever before. Which created another problem. Someone still had to wash all those dishes. The woman who refused to wash dishes. During the 19th century, hosting a dinner party was almost as exhausting as preparing one. After the guests left, hundreds of dirty plates remained. In wealthy homes, servants scrubbed them for hours. In ordinary households, women did the work themselves. Broken plates were common, especially expensive china. One woman grew tired of watching her treasured dishes chipped by careless hands. Her name was Josephine Cochrane. Born in 1839 in Ohio, Josephine came from a family of engineers and inventors. Her father was a civil engineer. Her great-grandfather, John Fitch, had built one of America's earliest steamboats. Although women rarely studied engineering during that era, Josephine possessed remarkable determination and mechanical insight. After hosting another elegant dinner party, she reportedly became frustrated with yet another chipped plate. Finally, she declared, "If nobody else is going to invent a dishwashing machine, I will." Working with mechanic George Butters, she designed an entirely new approach. Instead of brushes scraping delicate dishes, special wire racks held each plate securely. Hot, soapy water sprayed over them under pressure. The dishes emerged sparkling clean, without chips, without cracks. In 1886, Josephine received her patent. At first, homeowners weren't interested. Most houses lacked reliable hot water, but hotels, restaurants, hospitals, they immediately saw the value. Her dishwasher won the highest award at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Eventually, her company became part of what we now know as KitchenAid. More than a century later, every modern dishwasher still follows the same basic principle she invented. Did you know? Josephine Cochrane became one of the first women in America to found and successfully operate a manufacturing company based entirely on her own invention. She didn't wait for someone else to solve the problem. She solved it herself. By now, humanity had conquered some of its oldest household struggles. Laundry, cleaning, opening preserved food, washing dishes. Life was becoming easier, but one invention, one accidental discovery, was about to change the way the entire world cooked. It all started with a chocolate bar that shouldn't have melted. The accidental discovery that changed every kitchen throughout history. Most inventions were born from years of careful planning. The light bulb, the telephone, the airplane, each required countless experiments before finally succeeding. But sometimes, history changes because someone notices something everyone else ignores. A falling apple, a mold growing in a petri dish, a sticky note that wasn't sticky enough, or a melted chocolate bar. The year was 1945. The world was still at war. Scientists across Europe and America were racing to develop new technologies that could detect enemy aircraft before they appeared over the horizon. One of the most important inventions of the war was radar. Radar worked by sending invisible radio waves into the sky. When those waves struck an airplane, they bounced back, revealing its location. The heart of many radar systems was a device called a magnetron. It generated extremely powerful microwaves. At the time, nobody imagined those microwaves could cook dinner. The boy who never went to college. The man standing beside that magnetron was Percy Spencer. If anyone embodied the idea that determination can outweigh formal education, It was Percy, born in 1894 in rural Maine. His childhood was marked by hardship. His father died before Percy turned 2. Soon afterward, his mother left him to be raised by relatives. By the age of 12, he had left school to work in a textile mill. For many people, that would have been the end of their education. For Percy, it was only the beginning. Whenever he could, he borrowed books. He taught himself mathematics, physics, electricity, radio technology. When he heard that the US Navy was introducing wireless communication, he volunteered to learn everything about it, even though he had never studied engineering in a classroom. His co-workers were astonished by how quickly he absorbed complex technical knowledge. Eventually, Percy joined Raytheon, where his remarkable talent earned him more than 300 patents over the course of his career. Yet his greatest discovery would happen completely by accident. The chocolate bar that changed history. One afternoon, while testing a powerful magnetron, Percy noticed something unusual. The chocolate bar in his pocket had turned into a gooey mess. Most people would have shrugged and reached for another chocolate bar. Percy asked a question. Why? The next day, he placed a handful of popcorn kernels near the machine. Within seconds, pop, 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 the kernels exploded into fluffy popcorn. Curious, he tried one more experiment. This time, an egg. As one of his colleagues leaned in for a closer look, the egg suddenly exploded. Hot yolk splattered across the unfortunate observer's face. The laboratory erupted in laughter. It was messy, it was unexpected, but it proved something extraordinary. Microwaves could heat food from the inside out. Within 2 years, Raytheon introduced the world's first commercial microwave oven. It wasn't something you'd place on a kitchen counter. It stood nearly 6 feet tall. It weighed more than 340 kilograms, or about 750 pounds. It required its own plumbing to keep it cool, and it cost around $5,000 in 1947. Adjusted for today's money, that's well over $60,000. Only restaurants, hotels, hospitals, and ocean liners could afford one. But technology has a habit of shrinking. As electronic components became smaller and cheaper during the 1960s and 1970s, microwave ovens finally entered ordinary homes. Suddenly, leftovers could be reheated in minutes. Frozen meals became practical. Busy parents saved time. Office workers no longer needed a stove to enjoy a hot lunch. Today, hundreds of millions of microwave ovens quietly perform a task that once required one of the world's most advanced military technologies. Did you know Percy Spencer never earned a university degree, yet engineers around the world still regard him as one of the greatest self-taught inventors in American history? His story reminds us that curiosity is often more powerful than circumstance. By the middle of the 20th century, humanity had learned how to wash clothes automatically, remove dust from homes, open preserved food safely, wash dishes with machines, cook meals using invisible waves. Life was becoming faster, easier, more comfortable, but one problem remained unconquered: keeping food alive. The battle against time. For almost all of human history, food had one enemy: time. Fresh milk spoiled within hours during summer. Meat often lasted only a day. Fish had to be eaten almost immediately after it was caught. Entire civilizations developed around this simple reality. Markets opened every morning because food couldn't survive until next week. Families visited butchers daily. Farmers sold produce as quickly as possible. If they failed, everything was lost. Today, we solve that problem by opening a refrigerator. But before refrigerators, people tried something much more ambitious. They tried moving winter itself. Every winter, thousands of laborers marched onto frozen lakes carrying enormous saws. Working in freezing temperatures, they cut perfectly rectangular blocks of ice weighing hundreds of kilograms. The blocks were loaded onto horse-drawn wagons, covered with thick layers of sawdust, stored in specially built ice houses. The sawdust acted like a blanket, slowing the melting process. When summer arrived, the ice was sold throughout towns and cities. For wealthy families, servants delivered fresh ice every few days. For everyone else, ice remained a luxury. Then one entrepreneur looked at this frozen business and saw something impossible. The man who sold winter. His name was Frederick Tudor. Born in Boston in 1783, Tudor wasn't an inventor. He was a businessman with an extraordinary imagination. At just 23 years old, he announced a plan that many people considered absurd. He wanted to ship frozen lake ice from New England to the Caribbean, to South America, even to India. People laughed. Some newspapers mocked him. His first shipments melted almost completely. He lost fortunes, accumulated enormous debts, and even spent time in debtor's prison. Most people would have abandoned the idea. Tudor refused. By experimenting with insulation, he discovered that packing ice in thick layers of sawdust dramatically reduced melting. Soon, his ships were crossing oceans carrying frozen lakes to tropical countries. In places where people had never seen natural ice before, they suddenly enjoyed chilled drinks, fresh food, even ice cream. By the middle of the 19th century, Frederick Tudor had become one of America's wealthiest businessmen. People called him the Ice King. Yet even Tudor understood something important. Transporting ice wasn't enough. Humanity needed a way to create cold itself, the invention that changed civilization. For thousands of years, humanity had learned to preserve food with salt, smoke, drying, and ice. But all of those methods shared one problem. They depended on nature. A warm winter could mean less ice. A long journey could spoil food before it reached its destination. Entire harvests disappeared because there was simply no way to keep them cold. The next revolution wouldn't come from farmers or merchants. It would begin in a laboratory. The scientist who learned how to make cold. In 1748, a Scottish physician and chemist named William Cullen stood before his students at the University of Glasgow. Cullen wasn't trying to invent a refrigerator. He was exploring the strange behavior of liquids. During one experiment, he placed a liquid called ether inside a chamber and reduced the air pressure around it. Something fascinating happened. The ether evaporated almost instantly. As it evaporated, it absorbed heat from everything nearby. The temperature dropped so quickly that ice crystals formed. For the first time in history, a human being had created artificial cooling in a laboratory. Cullen never turned the experiment into a practical machine, but he had uncovered a scientific principle that still powers almost every refrigerator and air conditioner on Earth. The father of refrigeration, nearly a century later, an American inventor transformed Cullen's scientific discovery into reality. His name was Jacob Perkins. Born in Massachusetts in 1766, Perkins never attended a prestigious university. As a teenager, he apprenticed as a goldsmith, where he learned extraordinary precision in working with metal. Over the years, his curiosity led him into printing technology, steam engines, banking security, and engineering. Friends joked that there was almost nothing Perkins couldn't invent. In 1834, while living in London, he patented the world's first practical vapor compression refrigeration machine. The machine followed 4 simple steps. Compress a gas, cool it until it becomes a liquid, allow it to expand. As it expands, it absorbs heat from its surroundings. Then repeat the cycle. It sounds simple, but this elegant process remains the beating heart of nearly every refrigerator and air conditioner built today. Sometimes, the greatest inventions don't change, they simply become better. The doctor who wanted to save lives. Not everyone saw refrigeration as a way to preserve food. One doctor believed it could save lives. His name was John Gorrie. Born in 1803, Gorrie practiced medicine in the hot, humid climate of Florida, where diseases such as yellow fever and malaria claimed countless lives. Hospitals had no air conditioning. Patients lay in sweltering rooms. Gorrie noticed something important. Those kept in cooler conditions often seemed more comfortable and sometimes recovered more easily. Ice could help, but deliveries were expensive and unreliable. So Gorrie asked a remarkable question. Why not make ice ourselves? In 1851, he patented a machine capable of producing artificial ice. Many newspapers mocked the idea. Some claimed that only nature could create ice. Others believed machine-made ice would never replace natural ice. Discouraged and struggling financially, Gorrie died before his invention gained recognition. Yet today, every hospital, office building, shopping mall, and home cooled by air conditioning owes something to his vision. History often celebrates successful inventions. But sometimes, the people who plant the seeds never live to see the forest. When refrigerators became deadly, by the early 20th century, refrigerators were finally appearing inside ordinary homes. Families celebrated. Fresh food lasted longer. Milk stayed cold. Meat remained edible. Life became easier. Then tragedy struck. The gases used inside early refrigerators, including ammonia, sulfur dioxide, and methyl chloride, were highly toxic. If one leaked while a family slept, the consequences could be fatal. Several tragic accidents were reported in newspapers. Public confidence in refrigerators began to fade. Engineers knew they needed safer refrigerants, but one famous scientist wanted to eliminate the danger entirely. Einstein's forgotten invention. Most people know Albert Einstein as the father of modern physics. Few realize he also designed a refrigerator. In the 1920s, Einstein read about a family that had died after poisonous refrigerant leaked from their refrigerator. The story deeply affected him. Together with his former student, Leo Szilard, Einstein began designing a completely different kind of refrigerator. The goal was simple: no moving parts, fewer mechanical failures, greater safety. Between 1926 and 1930, the pair received several patents for the design. Although advances in refrigeration technology eventually made their invention commercially unnecessary, scientists continue to study the Einstein-Szilard refrigerator because it can operate using heat rather than electricity and has very few moving components. Even one of history's greatest physicists believed that making everyday life safer was a problem worth solving. The refrigerator changes the world. By the 1930s and 1940s, refrigerators had become increasingly common. Families no longer needed to shop every single day. Milk could last for days. Leftovers became normal. Fresh fruit traveled across continents. Supermarkets expanded. Restaurants offered larger menus. Food poisoning declined as cold storage improved. Hospitals safely stored medicines, blood, and vaccines. Entire cities became easier to feed. But refrigerators alone couldn't transform the world. Food also needed to stay cold while traveling. That challenge inspired another revolution. The man who learned from the Arctic. His name was Clarence Birdseye. Born in 1886, Birdseye loved nature from childhood. He studied biology but left college because of financial difficulties. Later, while working in Labrador, Canada, he observed something that local Inuit hunters had known for generations. Fish frozen almost instantly in the bitter Arctic wind tasted remarkably fresh after thawing. Birdseye realized that rapid freezing created tiny ice crystals that caused far less damage to food than slow freezing. After years of experimentation, he perfected commercial flash freezing. Suddenly, vegetables, seafood, meat, and fruit could be frozen, transported, and enjoyed months later with much of their original taste and texture. Today, frozen food is a multi-billion-dollar industry because one man paid attention to nature. The invisible highway. The refrigerator inside your kitchen is only the final stop on a much longer journey. Before your milk reaches your home, it travels through refrigerated storage facilities, temperature-controlled trucks, cold warehouses, distribution centers, supermarkets. This uninterrupted journey is called the cold chain. It's one of the most important systems in the modern world. Without it, fresh fruit from another country, seafood from distant oceans, life-saving vaccines, and many medicines could never safely reach millions of people. The cold chain quietly supports modern civilization every single day. Take one final look around your home. The washing machine, the vacuum cleaner, the can opener, the dishwasher, the microwave, the refrigerator. Individually, each seems ordinary. Together, they transformed human life. These machines didn't conquer nations. They didn't land on the moon. They didn't make headlines every day. Instead, they quietly changed billions of lives. They reduced exhausting physical labor. They made homes healthier. They preserved food, protected medicines, expanded education and careers by reducing hours spent on domestic work, created entirely new industries, and allowed families to spend more time together. The true measure of an invention isn't always how spectacular it is. Sometimes, it's how completely it disappears into everyday life. The next time you hear the gentle hum of your refrigerator, the soft swish of your washing machine, or the familiar beep of your microwave, remember, behind those ordinary sounds are extraordinary stories. Stories of a janitor who couldn't stop coughing, a woman determined to protect her fine china, a self-taught engineer who noticed a melted chocolate bar, a doctor trying to cool fever patients, a physicist who wanted to make homes safer, and countless inventors whose names rarely appear in history books. They all shared one belief, that everyday problems were worth solving. And perhaps, the greatest invention wasn't a machine at all. It was time. Time to learn, time to create, time to rest, time to be with the people we love. Because the greatest inventions are not always the ones that change history. Sometimes, they're the ones quietly humming in the corner of your home. Every ordinary object has an extraordinary history. All we have to do is look a little closer.
Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe by clicking the bell, and share this video. And I'll see you in the next one.